vehicle on jack stands. We're going to be changing this driver's side caliper. I've already changed the brake hose before. I'm going to be changing the caliper. This is a loaded caliper. It comes with new slides and everything. I have all the hardware. First thing you want to do is you want to pinch the brake hose so it does not leak fluid all over. There's this plier style tool, and there's this clamp style tool. Either one works. You can use vice grips if you like. They tend to have sharp edges. You just don't want something too sharp that's going to cut the hose. 15mm socket. And we'll go ahead and loosen up the brake hose. Your new caliper should come with new copper seals here for the banjo bolts. You can remove this all as one piece by removing two 21mm bolts. There's one here. There is one here at the bottom. And if you take those bolts out, the whole assembly, including the caliper, the pads, and the bracket will come off together. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to remove it separately so you know how it works. So if you remove these 13mm bolts here, there's one here and there's one here. So we'll remove those and they'll separate the caliper from the bracket. The first thing you want to do is take a screwdriver, put it in between your pad and the rotor. And you can see some of the fluid flowing out of there. What that's doing is pushing the pistons in, and that loosens up the caliper from the rotor. Remove two 13mm bolts on the slides. Caliper, you should be able to pull it right off, kind of like so. Being careful, you will have brake fluid spillage. Move the pads. That's the outer, here's the inner. Now these 21mm bolts, your bracket will come off. If we need to change the rotor at this time, that can also slide off. Rotor all cleaned up, painted. We can actually assemble all this together and put it on as one piece, or we can put it on separately. I think for the sake of the video, we'll put everything on separately. Brackets on, and the two bolts just finger tight. Now it does help to have one of the lug nuts on that actually holds the rotor straight so it doesn't interfere with anything. We'll go ahead and tighten up these 21mm bolts. You want to take a breaker bar or a torque wrench and give this the final tightening on the properly torqued. These clips back on, and we'll install the pads in the bracket. The pads are installed into the bracket. They just kind of go in. If you get top side in, and you just got to tilt in and get the bottom side in. The slide pins, and put those into the bracket here. One up top, one at the bottom here, and we can take these bolts off. We're ready to go ahead and put the caliper on. Now you want to make sure the pistons are all the way in. The caliper in position. Remember, these slides, you're able to move them in and out to get this caliper to go over that slide. And I have our 13mm bolts back in. Attach our hydraulic line. Have our hose on. Remember, there's a copper crush washer on this side, and there's one also on the other side. Go ahead and tighten that up now. And remove this line lock tool. Last steps that we do have to complete is bleed the system. Since we had the caliper off, the line off, there is air in the system. So you want to take this cap off, rubber cap from the bleeder screw. I'm going to use a hose so I don't make a mess all over this caliper with the brake fluid leaking. And I'll run that hose right into the container here. The master cylinder, you want to make sure your level is at max, or at least enough fluid in it so you don't empty this out while you're bleeding. With the cap off, you want to go ahead and loosen up your bleeder screw. This might take a minute or two before the caliper fills up with fluid and it will start flowing out of our hose. The method we're using is gravity bleeding. So all we have is a solid stream of fluid with no bubbles. We can go ahead at this point and tighten up the bleeder screw. Top the fluid off to the proper level. Depress the pedal and see if the pedal is nice and firm how it should be. If you still feel the pedal is a bit spongy, you can bleed the system again to make sure you got all the air out of it. Pedal feels good, it's nice and firm. When you're done bleeding the system, you want to make sure that's tight, your bleeder screw. Put the dust cap back on. If you have spilt any fluid on any parts of the vehicle, you want to go ahead and clean that off. You can use some brake clean, but soap and water works just as well. Brake fluid is very corrosive, so if you do leave that on there, it will start eating up the paint and corroding the metals. So you want to make sure that's cleaned off. Now all I have to do is repeat this process on the other calipers. I'll be doing that very soon, so stay tuned. Those calipers, we'll be painting them on the truck without removing them completely. Not that hard to do. In the next video, I'll be showing you how to do that. Thank you for watching.